Hi, I'm Brad Dacus. Welcome to Faith and Law. Folks, this is the last show of this season, and we're going to be saying goodbye to K-Wave. They've allowed us graciously to do our tapings here at their studio. We're going to be moving on to our own in-house studio that we've created. But I just want to thank them so much for being so gracious to the work that we're doing at Pacific Justice Institute and specifically getting out this information. Now, let's take a look at this trending viral video. Okay, in 92, all about coming together, world peace. And in 2024, it's all about insulting the majority of the world's population. We're Christians, mocking God, mocking the Last Supper. Wow. Well, folks, I don't know about you, but I was shocked to see this. In the past, you look at the opening ceremony of the Olympics, and what's it about? It's all about the nations of the world coming together in unity, in peace, mutual respect. And what did this opening ceremony communicate? Bigotry, hate, division, and specifically an attack on the world's largest religion, Christianity. That's what France had to offer the people watching the Olympic Games. This wasn't just a theater in France doing something outrageous. This was the Olympics for 2024, opening up with a theme that was a direct blasphemy against God and an insult to the majority of the world's population professing to be Christians. I don't think this is acceptable. It's not acceptable. In fact, I made a point basically not to watch the Olympics. I'm that fed up. And yet, this kind of deception is what we see happening around the world, where Satan says, oh, this is all about inclusion. That's what their defense was. They said, we're just trying to be inclusive. Inclusive about what? Mocking the Last Supper, courtesy of the radical LGBTQ movement, which hates Christians, despises what we believe, and you gave them that kind of platform in the name of inclusion? This was not about inclusion. This was about mockery, insulting, bigotry, hate, blasphemy. And you know what? It deserves nothing less. Now, here's what's interesting. I believe oftentimes God in his own creative way has the last word. Because you see, the next day, there in Paris, there was a massive blackout. That's right, a blackout. Except there was one building in Paris on a hill that did not have a blackout. They still had the lights on, glowing throughout the entire city. And you know what that building was? It was a church. And I can't help but think this is not a coincidence that after the day of blasphemy and mockery against God, the next day, that next evening, there would be a massive blackout all over Paris with the church and its light still shining. Now, let's take a look at what's happening here in the United States with regards to tyranny against students. To help us do that, I'd like to bring on the program now attorney Emily Mimnaugh. She's one of our attorneys. She's one of our staff attorneys who coordinates litigation with attorneys on behalf of PJI in a number of states. Emily, what's going on in Texas and Michigan right now that is an affront to students, and what are we doing at PJI to defend these students against tyranny?
Thanks, Brad. Yes, we are seeing the rights of students and parents really being trampled at the local school board level, where school board members are being targeted and retaliated against just for speaking out about basic privacy, safety, security, and accommodation concerns for students, including transgender students. And we're seeing that specifically in Texas and in Michigan, where school board members, for example, one school board member spoke out and said, we need to find a way to accommodate transgender students. And one of the proposals discussed was installing and creating a single individual stall so that that transgender identifying individual would feel safe and secure and have privacy And just for the temerity to make that suggestion to discuss a common sense approach to accommodating students, that school board member was told that they were going to be investigated by the FBI for violating or conspiring to violate the civil rights of another individual. To be honest, I'm not quite sure what civil right is violated when you are considering ways to accommodate a student, but that type of intimidation, that targeted practice, that attempt to chill speech and silence points of view or even discussions that a certain administration doesn't like, that's obviously deeply concerning. And it's not just at the federal level. We're also seeing other acts of retaliation where school board members or school boards will take adverse actions against one individual, maybe who's elected to represent one part of the district, where you have one school board member who is more conservative or Christian who speaks out on behalf of that student population or that demographic. We're seeing that as well, and it is very concerning. And of course, PGI is stepping up, defending those individuals, defending those school board members, and really, defending the entire student body and school district that school board member is elected to represent and to serve faithfully and without intimidation, target, or threat.
Emily, these are very important cases, but I don't think they're isolated. I'm really concerned that the Department of Justice, especially if this administration remains in power, they're going to continue this kind of tyranny, this kind of assault on school boards throughout the nation. What do you think are the implications involved here with the Department of Justice, the federal Department of Justice, strong-arming local school boards that are sensitive and reflective of the concerns of parents?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head right there, Brad. If a school district is sensitive and reflective of its population, it might be targeted by the administration. It might be targeted by either a federal investigation or even at the state level, which we see in California. We know, we've seen, we all read the intimidation letter that was sent to a school district by the California State Administration when they didn't like a policy, for example, that required parents to be informed if their student showed up to school suddenly identifying as a different sex or a different gender. If your student shows up at school and says they're experiencing gender dysphoria, of course we want parents involved. Of course they need the proper support at home, with medical professionals and at school. And the idea that you would want a policy of lying to parents, of keeping them out of an important medical situation with their child, it gets contrary to common sense. And yet we are seeing at the state level and the federal level actions being taken to target either individuals or entire school boards if they take sensitive decisions to reflect the concerns of the community that might be at odds with the extreme opinions and the extreme agendas of the administration or the state. And unfortunately, California seems to fall into that extreme agenda category. And we are seeing that unfortunately spread to other states. There are school districts here in Nevada that also have lying to parents as a policy. And PJI is ready to stand up and defend school board members, teachers, parents, and or students who are being harmed by these bad policies. So it really is not just limited to Texas or to Michigan or California. This is a nationwide problem. And of course, fortunately, PGI has offices coast to coast, Hawaii, California, you name it. And we are ready to stand with the school, stand with the teacher, stand with the student, whoever needs defending and protecting so that their freedom of expression, that their beliefs and really common sense values are protected, and we don't see the Constitution trampled by extreme far left radical ideologues who want to push gender ideology and silence sensible conversation and discussion.
Okay, Emily, where do we go from here?
That's a great question. Well, one of the things that we are seeing starting to take place now, taking shape on the horizon, is the use of administrative agencies to rewrite rules that are supposed to faithfully enact and execute statutes passed, dutifully and lawfully by Congress. For example, Title IX, the Olympics taking place right now. And one of the things that we're seeing, for example, is the Department of Education effectively rewriting Title IX to say that biological men who identify as women must be allowed to use the locker room or the changing space or the bathrooms of biological women. That's obviously not in Title IX. That was not contemplated when Title IX was passed. but you see administrative agencies rewriting the rules that are supposed to faithfully execute and enforce these statutes. So we're seeing that on the horizon. We're already getting ready in various areas to push back to stop that federal overreach, that unlawful suppression of local sensibilities, as you said, Brad. And again, we're also at the school board level making sure students, parents, teachers, school board members are allowed the opportunity to express their real, sincere, and genuine concerns that really are sensitive and reflective of the communities that they are supposed to serve. So we're seeing it at the administrative level, at the state level, the school board level. And so that's some of the areas in which we are maneuvering. And I should say, you know, part of this is not just staying on defense. It's not just standing up, defending, representing, and winning and securing wins for these school board members, for students, for parents who are unfairly targeted, prosecuted, persecuted. That's the defensive side, and we've got that nailed. But we're also going on the offensive, right? And one of the great things is it's an election year, it's the legislative season's getting ready to get going. And so what we also want to be doing is pushing and forwarding policies that are pro-parent, pro-family, pro-student, that respect the privacy and the dignity of all students. And that means accommodating students who are going through gender dysphoria. And it also means respecting the privacy rights of students, not to be forced to change in circumstances and use bathrooms and locker rooms where they don't feel comfortable. And also, of course, to keep parents in the loop. We're never, ever going to allow parents to be lied to by teachers, and teachers don't want to lie to parents. So there are common sense policies that we're going to be promoting and advocating for side by side with students, parents, teachers, and their communities.
Well, thank you so much for this important update, and keep up the great work. Clearly, folks, students today, particularly Christian students, have challenges that many of us didn't have to face when we were kids. And to help talk about those challenges to Christian students, I'd like to welcome to the show Hannah Faulkner. She has her own show, The Hannah Faulkner Show. She also is the head of an organization called The Culture of 1776. Welcome to the show, Hannah. Tell me, Hannah, what are the struggles that Christian students are facing today here in America? What's it like to be a Christian student in America today?
Yeah, I mean, really just a Christian America. I mean, you look at who is the most persecuted, the most attacked individual in America, and that's Christians. That's Christian families specifically. I mean, Christian families really are the most persecuted, the most attacked. And really that's their goal, is that they can break down us as Christians, that they can break down the Christian family, then they can control society. And so when you understand that, you know, there is an agenda there. But as it pertains to being a Christian, student, now I don't live on a college campus, but I do travel to many different college campuses. I just got back from being in 3 different swing states, Pennsylvania, in Ohio, and then Michigan. And as I was in those states, just talking to college students and students as they're there on these campuses, and they're seeing this face to face, they're up front, seeing the persecution. I have a friend. Recently, she received a 0 for saying the word biological woman in her paper on feminism, which was a required paper that she had to write for the class. And so we're seeing persecution of all sorts of kinds. I mean, you see the UNC frat boys, they have been persecuted so much just for holding up the American flag amidst the pro-Palestine protest at their college campus. And they've received a lot of persecution. They've received a lot of death threats from that. And for myself, I know when I host, liberals or those that don't agree with me on my show, I would probably receive at least 100 death threats a week. So it's crazy the things that we're even fighting. It's crazy that we have to ask the question, do you know what a woman is? It's what's even more crazy is that we have leaders that can't even tell us what a woman is. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. Now we have leaders of our country saying that pedophilia is not a crime. It's now an identity. And so we truly are fighting a spiritual battle, a spiritual war between good versus evil, moral versus evil. And so the time for Christians, but especially young people, I mean, Ronald Reagan said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It cannot be passed down through the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on to the next generation to do the same. And so if we aren't willing to do the bare minimum as students, as Gen Zers, to get out there this election, I can't vote this election as I'll be 17. But I'm encouraging everyone, especially, to get out this election and vote with your biblical values. I mean, that is it, is vote with your biblical values, vote for biblical principles, because what is our country founded upon? We are a country founded upon Judeo-Christian principles and values. And that is what has made America so great, as what has made America so free and amazing, is because we are founded on Judeo-Christian principles and values. So that's my message really to young people as a whole, is get out to the polls, be poll watchers, poll workers, stand up, don't back down, and keep fighting.
Hannah, why are you speaking up right now? What's your motivation?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I've got a great family. I have based in an amazing home. I've been very blessed with amazing parents that have really just taught me the why behind the what. I think that's the problem with a lot of families today, is parents fail to teach their children the why behind what they believe in and what they're teaching their children. And so I'm grateful, that's why I'm so passionate about the breakdown of the family. That's why I'm so passionate about fighting back against this breakdown of the family. Because again, what is the one thing that these globalists fear? And that is strong, godly, structured families. Why? Because they cannot control them. And the fastest way to break down a society is to break down the building block of that society. That's the family. And so I want to say it starts all in the home. It starts with the parents. I mean, parents all of the time come to me, they say, Hannah, how can we get your generation involved? How can we reach your generation? How can I get my kids to want to get involved? I say, well, listen, if you aren't even willing to get out to these events, if you aren't even willing to get out to this election and vote, if you aren't willing to show your kids that you care about the truth, then how can you expect them to care about the truth? So it starts with the parents. It starts in the home. But ultimately, I mean, truth applies to everyone. Objective truth, the truths that we're seeing, it applies to everyone, regardless of your age, the ethnicity, the color of your skin, where you come from. It applies to everyone. And when I understand that these issues that we're fighting don't apply to just one generation, they don't apply to just one age group or one ethnicity or color, they apply to everyone. And they are becoming global issues that we're seeing. And when you understand that we are one generation away from losing our freedoms, that's what motivates me to fight. That's what motivates me. And really, I mean, I remember being 9 years old and seeing what happened, in our country. We were in a bad place when I was about 9. That was when Trump got elected. But we are in such a bad place where we have grown men dancing provocatively in front of children. And we have, in just 8 years, and just within the past 5 years between COVID and now, our country has gotten so much further down. I mean, even worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah, you did not have grown men dancing provocatively in front of children. There was not this rise in pedophilia. I mean, we are worse than Sodom and Gomorrah right now in America and really globally. And so when you understand that we're about to lose our country on the fingertip, our country is on our fingertips. When you understand that, it motivates me to speak. And I do want to say this. A lot of people come to me, and I'm sure they come to you, they come to your organization, and they say, you know what? I love what you guys are doing, but it's just not for me. Politics just isn't for me. I every time I turn on the news, it just makes me depressed. I just get a lot of anxiety from what's happening in our country. And I tell them, I say, listen, don't let it depress you. Don't let it get you down. Our enemy, Satan, he wants us on our couch. He wants us doing nothing about what's happening. Let what's happening in the news, let what's happening in our country and really globally ignite a fire under your feet. Light a fire under your feet to take a stand and not back down.
Hannah, have you personally faced any kind of a pushback from secular society for how you're standing up for religious freedom?
Yeah, well, even Christian people that I know, they say, you know what, I like what you're doing. It's super cool, but I think you maybe it's too radical. Maybe it's just a little bit too far. Maybe you're saying things, we're just not there yet. I don't know if you should be saying that. It's just not it. Our founding fathers were radical. They said some very radical, give me liberty or give me death. I mean, I am sick and tired of this beating around the bush. I'm sure you guys are too. I mean, for far too long. The reason we're here is because we've been beating around the bush. We've been watering down all of these terms, all of these statements, and it's time to just say it how it is. And so the criticism, the pushback that I've received is not just from the other side. I mean, it's from our own side. I'm sure you guys have received that also. I remember when I was 15, I hosted the first Teens Against Gender Mutilation rally. We had about 600 attendees come out, 200 protesters. It was absolutely absurd. We had to have about 30 police officers there just to maintain peace because it was insane. You couldn't even hear yourself think. The drums, the sirens that they brought, the whistles, everything, it was insane. Total spiritual warfare. But the most discouraging aspect about this as a 15-year-old was the lack of church engagement with this rally. What was this rally about? It was just saying enough of mutilating my generation, enough of stripping my generation of their innocence and their dignity. We had Chloe Cole. I'm sure you're familiar with her. She's now 20 years old. She's a detransitioner. She, at 15 years old, had both of her healthy breasts removed. She was put on Lupron. She was put on testosterone and puberty blockers at age 13. And she's right now worried if she'll never be able to have children, as many detransitioners are today, because of the medical industry stripping her of that and lying to her and sending her down this path of destruction. So that's what this rally was about. It was literally just on protecting children's innocence and protecting human dignity.
So, Hannah, have you experienced any kind of criticism or pushback because of your standing up against the secular agenda?
I've always said certain things that I will say you're not safe on either side. Whether you're against it or you're for it, you're not safe. Like, you're going to always be threatened by something. But the important thing is what you're standing on. Are you standing on evil, or are you standing on what's right? Are you standing on truth or a lie? And so, I mean, even if you look at communist countries, many of the people that tried to, even in Mao, under Maoism, many of the school teachers that were trying to stand with Mao Zedong, they lost their lives because it didn't matter. They don't care anything about you. They may claim all these things that they care about you. They do not care about you. And so what matters the most, especially as Christians, is I imagine this, that we're all going to get there on Judgment Day. We're all going to face the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. And he's going to ask us, what did you do when it was your turn? What did you do when it was your turn to take a stand? Did you cower down when you were afraid to be called a few names? Because yes, we're all going to be called names. Again, regardless of the side we're on, we're always going to be called names. We're always going to be looked down upon, or maybe we're going to miss out on a couple activities or whatever it may be. But what is most important is what at the end, eternally is what matters. And when we come to when we face the King of Kings, and he asks us, what did you do when it was your turn? Did you bow down and say, you know what, I don't care about politics and religion? Or do you say, you know what, I didn't care, I lost my job, or I wasn't able to play on a football team? Well, regardless, I stood for the truth. I stood for what is right, because I understood that I was going to be saving thousands upon thousands of lives because I was standing on the truth. And ultimately, I'm fighting for the kingdom of God. And so, I mean, that's it. But then you think about the contrast between, even the men that stormed the beaches of Normandy, the men that lied about their age, knowing they were about to lose their life, but they loved the truth. They understood that what it was going to take to fight for freedom. When you think about that, I really think that that's what's empowering. You're like, you know what? A few name calling, a few name words that they're throwing at me, who cares? I'm going to stand for the truth, and I'm not going to back down. I would say that's my message ultimately. I mean, John Adams says, always stand on principle, even if you stand alone. So even if you're the only person in the room standing on some of the most basic of truths, that there are only two genders, you can't change your sex, abortion is murder, stand on that truth and don't back down.
Hannah, thank you so much for joining us, and keep up the great work. Folks, you may know of a student out there who wants to make a difference, but they don't know what their rights are. Maybe even a parent or a youth minister, perhaps a teacher that has their head on straight and wants to be truly respectful of parents in their community and in their schools. What do you do? Well, we've got a great resource for all of these people, particularly students, and it's a book called Reclaim Your School. You can download it for free on our website, pji.org. And while you're there, you'll find some other great free resources, as well as signing up to get our free Legal Insider. Folks, it's a great update on the many cases we're handling across the country. We right now have over 250 cases in active litigation, coast to coast. You can keep updated on these cases. It's very easy. Just sign up to get our free Legal Insider. And while you're there, you might want to take a look at that book, Reclaim Your School. It's very empowering, and it's also without charge. Now, let's take a look at the Word of God and what it says about how we're to face these kinds of challenges that we're dealing with today. First, let's take a look at Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. It says, "Work willingly at whatever you do, as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people." This is so important because, folks, the reality is we often don't get recognition. We often just get pushback. And we get calls from people in the workplace who are dealing with these kinds of situations. And sometimes they say, you know what? I just want to give up. I work hard and I just get mocked because of my faith. I have a hostile work environment. And, sometimes it is good to move on, to wipe the dust off your feet and move on. But sometimes we need to be a shining light. We need to stay where we are, knowing that we're doing what we're doing diligently, not to please men, but to please the Lord, always. And that sometimes involves persecution, folks. Now, let's take a look at Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. It says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." The fact is, folks, God sees everything. Nothing is hidden from him. And so when we see this kind of open blasphemy by France at the Olympics, remember, God sees it. He won't be mocked. Frankly, we have a lot going on in the United States. We have these radical LGBTQ parades in San Francisco and other places, openly mocking the institution of the family, mocking what God created, mocking Christians and people of faith. Remember, God will not be mocked. He sees it all. So you may get frustrated and angry, but remember, God sees it all. And for whatever reason, because he is God, he has exhibited tremendous grace and mercy upon this nation and upon many nations of the world. I think one reason he has is because he wants none to perish, but all to come to repentance, which means we as believers need to see this as a continued reminder of the fact that people out there need Jesus, and they need us to share the good news. If we don't share the good news, how are they to know? So let's draw closer to the Lord, and in drawing closer to the Lord, let the love of Christ shine, and let it compel us to exhibit courage in a time when people need Jesus all around the world, especially those parts of the world that are openly mocking our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So, folks, there you have it. We're going to face a lot of challenges out there. There's going to be a lot of persecutions. But remember, no matter how great the challenges, no matter how great the struggles, always, always keep the faith.